Welcome to Life 101 Podcast. The title of today's podcast is It Matters What You Say to Yourself. In this episode, I want to bring our attention to one of my favorite topics, which is the man in the mirror. Some call it self development. Self development is one of my favorite subjects. I want to pose a few questions. The first one is, do you all know who talks to you the most? The second one, do you all know who has been with you your entire life? And the last one, do you all know who will be the only person with you when it's time for you to leave this world? Those may sound simple to some, but I like to ask those questions. If you answered yourself, you are correct. There is no person we talk to more than ourselves. We talk to ourselves more than we talk to anyone else. I want to give you some things to ponder in this episode. Some things may be a little triggering for some people, and if it is, I understand that you might have to stop listening, but I wanted to make sure I said that. Remember, the name of the podcast is Life 101. So we are reflecting on our life, how we respond to situations that happen in our everyday life. So now we're into 2024. What have you been telling yourself? I'm not talking about resolutions, although creating short term goals are always wonderful. My question is, what are you saying to yourself when no one else is around? What is that conversation about? What do you want to do with the life that you have left? And what I think about is when I talk about this kind of thing is I have a diverse audience. I have age groups, from the early 20s all the way to 70 from what I've been told, to the into the 70s. But even people in their early 20s talk to themselves. They have those conversations about what they want to do with the rest of their lives, who they want to marry, where they want to live. So they start having those conversations even if they don't speak them. They still have them with themselves. Most people want to achieve. Most people want to eliminate poor behaviors or build better relationships with their loved ones. This is the year you need to tell yourself you matter. But more than tell yourself you matter, show yourself you matter. I'm all about the man in the mirror. If you want a better career, make the necessary changes. If you have a poor relationship with your immediate family and you see they are unwilling to change some of the toxic behavior, you need to have a serious conversation, not with them first, with yourself. And understand that sometimes the problem is the people from our bloodline. And I do understand that everybody needs to work on something. I'm not talking about that. That's not this kind of this episode. This is toxic behavior that may be coming from a loved one. Because if it's not coming from family and if it's coming from somebody you're dating or somebody at work, you can distance yourself with boundaries. But if it's coming from a family member, a parent, an adult child, or a spouse, those are some very different conversations you need to have with yourself. This is a tough thing to acknowledge. And even more difficult, you have to acknowledge it with yourself before you talk to anybody else that I'm in a toxic relationship and it's my mom, it's my dad, it's my adult child. Those are some very difficult conversations that you must first have with the man in the mirror. You got to talk to yourself first. What I have noticed is that people who come from toxic families and that toxic family member is unwilling to change, the one that's working on their mental health, the one that's working on their emotional well being, they feel obligated. They feel obligated to be around the toxic family member when they know that person is emotionally or mentally unhealthy. They feel obligated. I'm not saying call them on the phone and check on them. That's different. You can call and check on them, but I mean they feel obligated to be in their presence all the time, go by their house, pick them up. And if it's an adult child or a mom or dad or their sibling and they're not healthy, you need to have that conversation not with them. You need to talk to yourself. I want to make sure that I'm clear when I talk about toxic behavior in families because people have their own, ideas about that. But what I mean by toxic behavior is those family members that are engaging in physical confrontations, verbal abuse, manipulation, any other harmful behavior where you are at risk for being hurt emotionally, mentally, or both, and sometimes, unfortunately, physical. For whatever reason, sometimes people continue to keep toxic family members close by. And I have to have conversations with them and just let them know this is unhealthy for you. I don't mention too much of other family members unless they're in the room, but sometimes I have to just, call everybody in and have this conversation. And I say to you as a therapist, not your therapist, love you, care enough about yourself, and recognize it's the man in the mirror that I have to take care of. I have to be okay before I help anybody else, before I extend myself to anybody else. I didn't say that, you know, that you can't love the person. That's not what I'm saying. I didn't say you couldn't go around them. That's on you. I said love you. You must heal whatever emotional injuries you have so that you don't allow other people to bleed all over you. And some that don't know me, when I use that term bleed all over you, other people can bleed all over you, um, and you didn't even cut them. They cut you by, manipulation or emotional neglect or some other poor behavior. That behavior bleeds on to you, to your life, to your mental health. And that's what I mean when I say don't allow people to bleed all over you. What I've noticed, um, when you get into toxic family members, and I wasn't trying to go down this rabbit hole, but I'm here, so I guess I am going to talk about it. But what I notice in toxic family members and those that stay, remember, we're not talking about the one that actually is doing the behavior as much in this episode. I'm talking about the ones that allow the behavior to go on with them, that they stay around the person. Typically, it's women. And please, no virtual tomatoes, please, but I don't have very many men, and most of my clients are men because of the area that I cover, and that's all I'm gonna say about that. I do have some women, but anyway, right now I have mostly males, but most of them do not allow people and their problems to bleed over in their life. If it's not their wife, even their kids, they just do not. They are not going and going to pay their kids' bills. They're not running to every game. I mean, they do that kind of stuff, but they don't run to every emergency is what I'm getting to. If mom and dad are being sent and they're putting mom and dad into an assistant living, if they have a niece or a daughter, they will show up. Sometimes the son do, sometimes. And I'm not saying that men don't care. I'm saying men do not allow themselves to consistently be put in behaviors that will bring them harm. That's what I'm getting to as it relates to toxic family members. Most of the time, I have women who put themselves in harm's way trying to help a toxic family member. Men just I just don't have those conversations most of the time with a male to tell him, please just be mindful. This person's unhealthy emotionally, they're not well. I just typically have it with women, so that's why I'm bringing that up. And I just want to say sometimes it's a sibling. We feel obligated to keep talking to the sibling or the parent, and we clearly can see that they are not well. Especially, I'm not talking about if they've been diagnosed with a illness. That's a different episode. I'm talking about those who are emotionally unwell, unwilling to change. I'm talking about relatives who are in their 40s, 50s, 60s, 70. I've even seen some 80-year-olds, and it is just astounding to me, when I see an 80-year-old and they are just toxic and unkind and mean and manipulative to, most of the time, their adult children, and trying to get them to do what they want them to do. That's just an analogy that I've seen. But I'm saying if the person is unhealthy, is what I'm getting to. You have to make a decision, and the decision first starts in your head. Are you going to continue to allow this person to bleed all over you when you didn't hurt them? And all I'm saying is learn to love yourself. You can love that person, love them from a distance. It's called boundaries. It's called emotional wellness. You can call them, check on them, send them a card, whatever you feel like you need to do because you might be the niece, the daughter, the daughter-in-law, whatever. Typically, sometimes it's males, but in most of the cases that I've experienced, it's been um, the mom or the sister or the daughter. I'm not here to be unkind. I'm here really to just instruct and say, listen, be empowered. Understand that you matter. Don't allow people to treat you like you are an option. You're not. And sometimes we just have to have the tough conversation with ourselves. And I always think, okay, sometimes people are not reminding themselves. It matters what you are telling yourself. Remember, the conversation begins in our head first. And guess what? It matters if you're not telling yourself something as well. Because some people don't think anything. They think it is normal to be in a toxic environment and relationships and whatever it is. I just happened to go down the rabbit hole of the family members. I don't know how I got there, but I'm here. Whatever it is, it has become normal. It is what they do, and they don't know how to get out of it. And I say to you, if I'm speaking to you and you don't know how to get out of a toxic relationship, and it's your cousin, it's your sibling, it's your, unfortunately, if it's your child or parents that you're taking care of, I'm saying create boundaries for you. I didn't say not that you shouldn't talk with them. I'm saying create boundaries for you. If you feel like you need to reach out to them every Sunday, give them a call. If you know that they're going to go down a different place and they're going to, and it's difficult to see them, try and see them once a month. Whatever works for your mental health. Remember, it is about the man in the mirror. I learned just because you're born into a family, that does not make those people your family. And I can hear all kinds of amens and high fives on that because I understand that sometimes people are still emotionally wounded, that they don't understand that. They don't want any other relationship. They have this idea that family is the people that take care of you and they should take care of you, and you're born into this idealistic, environment, and that's not real life for most people. Some people have really, decent, parents and grandparents, and I think those things are great. But I'm saying sometimes, some of us, we have family members who are our parents and or our adult children, or a husband or a wife, and they're emotionally or mentally unhealthy, and there's just no other way to say it. And I've had many cases where it was the family who brought great harm to the person I was treating. Very rarely have I had any cases, in almost, it's close to 30 years now, where I've had strangers harm other people. It is normally people they know. And most of the time it is a family member. Or they hurt or they're hurting themselves with alcohol or some other substance abuse. So I just want to make sure that I say that. Um, I don't know how I got down this rabbit hole of talking about families, but that just is something when I start talking about just keeping boundaries that just, I just ended up down this rabbit hole. But I said it in a previous podcast that friendly fire is the worst fire, which is the pain that comes from those who are supposed to care for us, support us the most, and they are called family. And I say to you, sometimes your family could be that person you've known since your childhood that's a neighbor. Sometimes your family could be the person that's down the street from you that comes and cuts your grass, or you guys go out for coffee every Saturday. That could be your family. I have learned from personal experience, as well as with many cases, that it is the person that shows up for you that you don't have to ask. They have become like that sister to you. They have become like that mom to you. So the person that shows up for you, they're your family. And in the next episode, I will be talking about abandonment. And I will make sure that I put a disclaimer on the podcast that I'll be talking about abandonment. So for some people, that may be a trigger. And I don't want to trigger anything for anyone, but I also want us to be healthy, emotionally well. Just an FYI, I have a mental health advice column, and you can leave any questions or comments on there if you like. I just want to make sure I told you about that. This is your host, Sanetta, and this is Life 101 Podcast. Thank you for listening, and I will speak to you in the next episode.